Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast, where we discuss everything female athlete performance training. Today, I have registered dietitian Lindsay Hazard back on the show to discuss nutrition around injury and how it can help with the healing process. So, Lindsay, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Of course. Yeah, let's get right to it. And I know you and I chatted off air last time about how when young girls get injured or they have a surgery, they tend to think that they need less in their nutrition because they are not as active as they once were. And some of the dangers they can run into is just still not fueling enough. So, what would you say for an athlete who's going through injury and rehabbing? What are some of the pointers you would give for nutrition?
Yeah, so first thing, if you can, I would definitely reach out to someone like myself or a dietitian local in your area to really help you figure out your fueling plan because nutrition can be a huge component in helping you recover faster. If we're just going with baseline guidance, I would say make sure you're eating regularly every 4 hours, getting in at least 20 to 30 grams of protein because protein is very important for healing and still making sure we are having some carbohydrates. A lot of athletes tend to eliminate those when we eliminate activity, and then really focusing on getting in that color, that fruits and vegetable component for all of the micronutrients found in there that can help with healing as well.
Let's get into the protein and what really goes on with healing and injury. So if an athlete just had an ACL surgery, how is that going to help with the healing and the rehabbing process?
Yes. So when you think about healing, you immediately think about all of the cell like proliferation and regeneration that has to occur. And all of our cells are made out of protein. And so the only way for our body to have that protein available to help with that process is for us to consume that protein. So for some of my athletes, a lot of time, especially with surgery, appetites can drop. So using some sort of protein supplement like protein shakes can be really helpful there to meet those protein needs.
Mhm. Yeah, it's really important because a lot of girls who go through an ACL rehab, for example, they're in their PT's office the day or 2 days after
Mhm.
surgery, and they're already starting to get after it and do some isolated exercises, and in
Mhm.
order to make the most of those, you need that protein. What about the carbohydrates? Because a lot of girls will justify that they're not sweating as much or they feel like they're expending as much energy. What are some of the carbohydrate requirements for injured athletes?
Yeah, so baseline, our brain needs anywhere from 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates per day to function. And so that's great right there is making sure we're keeping our brain well fueled because especially with injury, we can see a lot of anxiety and depression come in because we're not allowed to do the activities that make us happy
Mm.
and keep us driven. Carbohydrates and keeping your body well fueled it can help with that anxiety and depression and help with managing that just because you're feeding your brain well there. And then also for PT, we do need some carbohydrates for energy there. And those carbohydrates also have vitamins and minerals important to help facilitate that healing process as well.
I'm so glad you brought up the mental part of it because it can really make you sad or more depressed or anxious during this time because you're just kind of sitting around and you're just eager
Mhm.
to play again. So, those carbohydrates are important for the brain function. Any other vitamins and minerals that will help with the functioning of the brain during this time?
I mean, I would say all of them are gonna help with brain function because we do need all of them, but, like, omega-3s can be something really helpful, and then when it just comes to nutrition and thinking about our brain health and thinking about our mental health as well, is almost thinking of your nutrition as part of your training plan and just really like, it can be a great time for an athlete to really start working on their fueling because you have a little bit more time on your hands and really seeing that nutrition is going to be part of healing and part of getting back into your routine. So once you start getting back into training a little bit, your nutrition needs to match that. And so focusing on nutrition here can just be a way to really keep yourself mentally in the game because it is something that is going to help with facilitate overall. healing and recovery.
That's so true. There definitely is a lot more time to focus on proper nutrition and maybe starting to cook your own meals or get to the grocery store with your parents. So I love that part of it. Now, just quickly coming back to the omega 3s, what are some foods that girls can eat that are very rich in omega 3s?
So fish is going to be the best one, especially salmon. Most of the time, we do have to supplement. So looking for a third party certified supplement would be a good way to go there because that way you can control how much you're getting in. Supplement wise, typically, again, this is general recommendations, is 3 to 5 grams of fish oil to get those omegas in.
Is there a certain supplement brand for omega 3s you recommend? I mean, there's so many out there. You go to the store and you're like, which one should I pick? Which one's legit?
Yes. I'm double checking the name of the one that I typically recommend, but I believe it is Nordic.
Mm.
Um, it's the one I use too. But yeah, Nordic Naturals fish oil is typically the one that I recommend. It is third party certified, so it's a good one to go with.
So, guys, make sure you write that one down. There's just so much available at the store, but not every supplement you can trust. And also, if you do need more guidance on other supplements, please reach out to Lindsay or work with her one on one because sometimes you think you're getting enough of something in your plan, but oftentimes you might not be, and you do need some guidance on that supplementation. Now, Lindsay, are there any other issues you see young girls running into, maybe girls you've worked with in the past during the injury time and some things they're falling short on in their nutrition?
Yeah, I would say a big thing I've personally seen in my practice is where maybe an athlete and I are going a month between sessions because they're really dialed in. So we're just following up a month in just to check in. And during that time, they've gotten injured and they haven't reached out to me and told me, hey, I got injured. What should I change with my nutrition? So typically I'll see this athlete and they'll be like, oh, yeah, like I got injured. So I just haven't been doing anything. And that's a huge mistake because when we back off on our nutrition, it is going to make the healing process take a lot longer. Other things I've seen is, especially after surgery, is figuring out how are we going to get your food on the table if you have trouble getting around or if you're on crutches, your energy needs are exponentially higher just because you're taking so much more energy to get around. So really looking at the whole picture and identifying where any barriers could be or hey, maybe the medication you're on is making you really full. What are some things we can do to get around that to make sure you're getting in the nutrition that your body needs?
That's so funny with the crutches because I remember when I was on crutches for 4 weeks due to an injury, I was exhausted. And it
Yes.
was those carbs and protein that just helped, like, keep me around and keep me sane. So I'm so glad you mentioned that because it seems like it's not a lot of energy when you're hurt, but it definitely can be a
Yes.
lot.
You're basically carrying yourself around all day.
Yeah. Now, I know people are probably curious, and I just want some more clarification on this. But when we put an injured athlete next to a healthy athlete who's playing, would you say overall the caloric needs are pretty similar and that injured athlete definitely should not cut back too much?
Yeah, so it really depends on the severity of the injury. So if an athlete has had surgery, their needs are going to be a lot higher than someone who has like sprained their ankle, just because of the healing process involved. So it really varies. Unfortunately, there's like not a 100% answer, but I would say to most injured athletes, you need more than you think you do. And I would always go with the guidance of consuming a little more than you think because if a lot of athletes underconsume because they don't want to get fat is what I hear is I'm worried about getting fat. I don't want to gain weight. My coach told me to make sure I don't gain weight. And I would rather my athletes gain an extra pound or two because we're fueling well rather than really focusing on not gaining anything and it taking exponentially longer for you to recover.
Mhm. I've heard a lot of that as well about gaining weight because you're sitting around too much or you're on bed rest and you're not out there playing and running. But honestly, more often than not, I've seen girls lose a ton of weight during this time, especially muscle mass. And
Hmm.
if we're thinking return to play down the
Hmm.
road, you need to make sure you're still getting enough for those muscles to not totally atrophy on the injured
Mhm.
leg or limb or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of weight loss and it's very scary.
Mhm. And one thing you can do, there's no way we're gonna completely prevent muscle loss,
Mhm.
when the muscle's not being worked. There's just no way. But things we can do is really hitting your protein needs. So really thinking, what can I do to make sure I'm at least hitting 25 to 30 grams of protein at each meal? And you may need even more than that. It really just depends on your size. But what can I do to get that protein in to really protect your muscle mass?
Mhm. Do you have any recommendations on girls who are done the rehab phase? Now they're slowly getting back into the game. Anything that they really need to pay attention to leading up to this?
Yeah, so I would just pay attention to, is your new training sessions, are they interrupting a time you would normally get a meal or a snack in? So making sure that we're not missing out on eating opportunities, making sure that we're increasing our intake a little bit, because if we're adding in an extra hour or two, 4 or 5 of practice per week, that's going to mean that your body is going to need extra energy for recovery. And I know I've beat protein into the ground, but when we get back into training again, we're having a little bit more muscle breakdown. You think about how much more sore you are in the beginning of a season. So you do need a little bit of extra protein during this time as well.
Mhm. I love that. And I have one more question as far as
Mhm.
healing during injury. And I don't know if you've seen research on this, but as far as stress fractures or bone breaks,
Mhm.
is there anything that can speed up healing by doing proper nutrition, or do we not know enough on that yet?
Proper nutrition definitely will help, like, speed up the process. It's not going to make it exponentially faster, but a lot of bone injuries occur because of under eating, and so under eating is going to make the process a lot slower. Also looking at calcium and vitamin D, are we getting in enough? Typically I hear from my athletes, when they've had bone injuries, their doctors will have their vitamin D levels checked, because low vitamin D is not good for bone injuries. And so making sure if vitamin D is low, or we're not getting in enough calcium from our diet, to make sure that we're supplementing accordingly. Especially females, we lay down all of our bone density early on. So we definitely, as teenagers, need to make sure we're taking care of business there.
I'm so glad you mentioned vitamin D because the main source obviously the sun, but when you're injured, you're inside. You're on the
Hmm.
couch or in your bed. So that is so important. And do you also recommend a supplement for vitamin D or what types of food are vitamin D rich?
Yes, vitamin D is one of the hardest to get from food. It's found in fish, especially when you're having like the bones, like thinking sardines with it. But mushrooms are another good source than all your dairy products. But typically, it's really hard to eat enough vitamin D. So I definitely will typically recommend supplementing, especially if they've had vitamin D labs run and they've come back low.
Mhm. Now, is there anything else you want to add or any tips for healing during injury and just really focusing on nutrition?
Yes, I would say that just thinking about not restricting any food groups is going to be really important, because that good nutrition is going to enhance recovery. The less you eat, the fewer like healing nutrients you're consuming. And so to think about it of like, oh, like the more variety of food I have on my plate and that I'm consuming, the more nutrients I'm giving my body to heal, instead of, oh, the more food I have on my plate, the more weight I'm going to gain. Really switch your mindset around that, and don't be scared of weight gain. Some weight gain is completely natural during the process. And if you're feeding your body well, you're going to get to return to what you love more
Mm.
faster. So,
Yes, that's such a good point. And it's just like such a nice time to really make sure you're feeling better because you can feel down during your
mhm.
recovery. And what better way than to fuel your body and just infuse it with nutrients?
Yes. Yes,
So,
and just take advantage of the time to be like, "Okay, like, I can't do my actual sport right now, but maybe I can learn about nutrition for recovery, nutrition during activity, nutrition around traveling and tournaments and all of that, and gain all of this knowledge that you can use once you are back to playing at your normal level."
Or you guys could also work with Lindsay because you have some extra
Yeah.
time. So before we wrap up, Lindsay, just give a brief summary of some of the programs and coaching that you offer.
Yeah, so right now I do one-on-one coaching, so individual sessions. I've have done some siblings together, but just we really work together, create a unique, individualized program for you and your needs. Really focusing on what your goals are and making everything completely structured to what you like. Your timing, looking at your practice schedule because I know all of these athletes I'm working with have insane training schedules, like every day looks different. And so, if needed, we will come up with meal and snack schedules for 5 days during the week because they're so different. And really just helping you be successful with the kind of structure that you're doing now. And I promise I don't completely 100% overhaul everything you're doing. At a time, we move slowly and just really work on that consistency.
Super. So, guys, be sure to check out the caption below. I've included Lindsay's website and also her social
Mhm.
media handles, and she'll definitely be back on the show. So, please like, share, comment if you want to see her back.
Yes.
Lindsay, thank you again, and see you guys next time.
Thanks. Bye.